This one's going to be a little bit of a different video. I talked about how to think about tech offers, IPOs, stock purchasing, options, etc. recently on stream, and I don't know, I felt like the discussion was pretty good, so I'm going to basically edit together my thoughts on that and throw it after this. But I wanted to put a little preface on this at the beginning to let you know that none of this is financial advice. I am not a financial advisor. I'm not a tax consultant. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. These are the things that I have collected over time and how I think about these problems. So take the rest of the video with a grain of salt, but I have a little bit of experience in this, so maybe it can be helpful for you framing how you think about your financial decisions and weighing one offer against each other. And again, not financial advice. Don't take this as financial advice. Don't make actions based on this. I'm trying to absolve liability from the things that might be in this video. But anyway, let's jump into that. I'm Appel. Hello. Hey, Anthony, I have 2 job offers. What's a good place to get advice on which one to choose? They both seem like good options. I mean, a lot of that is going to come down to personal preference. Like equity benefits honestly don't really matter, except, well, here's my opinions on this shit. This is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. But here's my thoughts on companies and benefits. Most benefits don't fucking matter. If you look at the monetary offset for like, oh, they provide lunch every day. That's like what? You're gonna be working about 48, 50 weeks. Let's just say you work 50 weeks a year. That's like 250 meals. And it probably costs them like, let's say $10 a meal. Something like that. That benefit is worth about $2,500, which is like zero. Or you look at, I don't know, a gym subsidy. Yeah, it's convenient, but it's like $100 a month for a year. It's like $1,200. It's like zero. The only benefit that I think is actually worth it, because it compounds, is 401k matching. That is the only one that it's difficult to put a monetary value on, and it accrues over time, and it's something that you can't get otherwise. Because you can't just arbitrarily contribute to a 401k. The rest of it comes down to how much you get in cash versus how much you get in options versus how much you get in RSUs. Obviously, you want enough cash to be able to, live your life, whatever lifestyle you want to aim it for. And obviously, more cash is everything else constant. More cash is always good. Everything else constant, more stock is always good. With options, you have to be careful because they are not guaranteed money in 2 ways. One way, in that if your company never has a liquidity event or they never go public, your options will never be worth anything. You can sometimes trade them on private markets, but usually you can't do anything with them. Also with options, if you leave the company, you have to either forfeit them, pay them out, or buy them within some amount of time. So they are also restrictive in that you're kind of stuck, so to speak. Those are options. And the value of them is very unpredictable. You basically have no idea how much an option is going to be worth. You can estimate based on strike price and extrapolate based on company growth, assuming you're at a growing company. If you're not at a growing company, I don't want to work there anyway. But it's, options are pretty difficult to compare. RSUs, on the other hand, are basically cash, but in stock form. You get them. You get them for free. I mean, you have to pay tax on them, but you get them for free. And Usually you can sell them in a particular window after a particular amount of time. And depending on your belief in the company and whether you want to keep them as a sound investment or not. I shouldn't say sound investment because almost all tech RSUs are not a sound investment. And again, this is not financial advice. This is not investing advice. These are my opinions. But RSUs are essentially cash. And my advice with RSUs is as soon as they vest, sell them. And reinvest them in index funds. You will usually have a better return. One, you'll have a better return. Two, you won't be watching your company's stock price all day, every day. And three, when they go down, they will go down, you won't give a shit. Like, I used to work at Lyft, and yeah, I'm fucking glad that I wasn't holding any stock. Because this happens. That's just kind of how tech stocks work. The other thing about tech stocks is they're not really a sound advice. They are volatile as all hell. And you're going to be much happier putting it into index funds. The other thing you want to look at with stocks is vesting structures. There are two popular vesting structures. One of them is share count vesting, and the other is value grant vesting. With share count vesting, or I often call it classical grants, they have a number of shares that you are granted as part of your contract. Well, as part of your I guess it's the contract. And those shares will vest over time. Typical vesting structures are after a year, you will get 1/4 of your vest count of shares. And then you will usually vest either quarterly, some companies do monthly, like Century does monthly. But you will vest the rest of those quarterly. And this is usually what's called a cliff. And classical vesting is usually better because as the company grows in value, your vest is worth more and more over time. Because you are granted a count of shares. You're not granted a dollar amount, you're granted a count. And if you're the pre-IPO company, that usually means that value of company goes up over time. If the value of your company is going down, you probably don't want to work there. Then the other type is value grants, which I've talked about before on stream. But value grants are useful if your company is already public to hedge against either downturns in company value or just volatility in general. The way a value grant works is instead of being granted a share count, you are granted a dollar amount. And there's kind of two ways to do it. One of them, they grant the dollar amount at the beginning of the year. The other, they grant a dollar amount at the end of the year. The end of the year version is they might as well be giving you cash. Because your value does not increase as the company increases, but it also doesn't decrease. So let's say that you had an end of year value grant that granted on this date here, May 16th. You would get the same dollar amount as when you were promised that dollar amount on May 16th. But if you had a beginning of the year grant, say you were at this date here, well, you probably have to go all the way back to May 16th, but let's pretend it's a 6-month grant because I don't want to zoom out. If you were granted a dollar amount here at $43 per share, and then you received it at $19 a share, you would have lost half your value. And that's also true for classic granting. Like if you're classically granted a certain number of shares here, you would be sad when this drop happened. You would lose your value. But typically you're expecting your company to go up. And the reason value grants are kind of a scam is assuming your company increases in value, and let's just say conservatively it's a 20% increase year over year, which is a fairly reasonable growth rate for a hyper growth, or not even a hyper growth, a like medium growth startup. 20% year over year. That's pretty reasonable. At the 2-year mark, you've left 60% of your take home on the table because it compounds. At the 4-year mark, you've left close to 1.4x your take home, which is pretty bad. And so if you're applying to a company that's pre-IPO, typically they should have classical granting, but often they will do value grants because it means that they pay their employees less. But anyway, these are the things that I think about when looking at offers and how I value different things. Perks are meant to bring people in but don't add value. Yeah, that's typically true. Healthcare advice would definitely be a good topic. All I managed to do is buy the freaking most expensive thing. Yeah. Yeah. That is usually the best advice if your employer is covering it. Some employers only have partial coverage, which I also think is pretty unusual in tech, but I have seen it. Stripe only had partial coverage, which is... I can also talk about how IPOs are kind of a scam too. You want to see why IPOs are a scam? I'll give you my example at Lyft. God, this just looks so bad. IPOs are a scam because, well, if you have vested shares at the time of an IPO. Because this is the dollar amount I was taxed at. $78.29. For, I don't know, not quite, like, I think I had like 700,000 in Lyft stock when the IPO happened. At the IPO vesting price. But typically with IPOs, employees are locked out of trading for 6 months. 6 months, something like that, blackout period. Basically, it prevents a sell-off as soon as everyone gets their liquidity. It allows liquidity to kind of trickle out in a way. Now, some employees are exempt from this, notably executives, so execs can sell out. But the IRS sees this liquidity event as you acquiring value at that date. Again, not tax advice, not financial advice. But the IRS basically sees this as me getting $750,000 on this date, and then by the time I could sell, which was in October, only having 50% of that value. So that's always a fun one. But yeah, I essentially had a $1 million tax burden, but only half the capital that actually existed from it. So be very careful when your company IPOs that you have, you know, the proper the proper reserves in order to handle dealing with the liquidity event. Because, you know, if you don't, then yeah, an IPO can be like a financially devastating event. So yeah, here's another example of like don't hold company stock. I joined Yelp in 2012 after their IPO. My first vest was here-ish. Oh wait, no. Yeah, my first vest was here-ish. I had options. I could have sold at almost 100 a share. But I didn't know any better, and so I held my company stock. And then this happened. Oh, it's just a little downturn. Buy the dip, it'll go up. Oh, it's going up. Nice, yeah, exactly. Oh, it's just a little downturn. I did sell around here though, so it wasn't too bad. But yeah, don't hold company stock is my I guess my advice there. But a lot of people joined Yelp around this time, and Yelp was still giving out options. And so you could imagine all of their options are worth negative value here. Did Yelp offer the ability to purchase Yelp at a stock discount? Yeah, oh, that's the other thing I didn't talk about is employee stock purchase plans. ESPP. These are almost always worth it if you have cash reserves. So what and basically what they do is they offer you the ability to purchase stock over a period. They have a start period and an end period. Typically, the way it works is you will purchase the stock at the minimum price minus a discount during that period. So if we go back to this graph, for instance, let's say that there was an ESPP between, let's say, 2000 and 2002. They usually don't work that way. They're usually like a 1 month or a 6 month period. But let's say that it was between this period. What they'll typically be set up as is they will pick the minimum price during that period. So let's say 1780. Then they will discount that by 15%, so somewhere around $15. Yeah, so let's say $15 a share. And then at the end of the grant period, they will give you the stock at that purchase price. So doing the math here, $15 a share at $35 a share. So you're almost getting 220% of your value by being able to exercise some of your cash reserves that you set aside during this period. And so you're basically making, well, in this is an extreme example where the stock has a lot of volatility. But you're essentially doubling, I mean, in this case, you're doubling your money. Now, some of the ESPPs I've been in have been less than that. Like, I think I only made 20% on one of my Lyft ESPPs. But ESPP is almost always worth it if your company offers it and you have the cash reserves. Although read the terms very carefully, because some of them don't do the like minimum value, some of them do it based on end value. But even if it's based on end value, you're basically getting 15% of your money for doing nothing, other than having money. You know, the rich get richer. But yeah, ESPP usually pretty good. And this is something that I didn't know about until the second company I worked at. Yelp had an ESPP. I just didn't read it. I didn't understand. No one explained it to me. No one was like, this is good, you should participate in it. No one tells you this shit.